All right, welcome. Another fun and exciting session here at Launch Q1 2021. I want to thank you all for being here and hope that we're ready to have a great time today. My name is Brian Bork, and I am here today to talk about exploring adaptable learning with activity-based assessment outcomes. Now, we're not just going to talk about outcomes. We're going to talk about making your scored labs and challenge-based learning and things like that. We're going to talk about making them dynamic. That's the whole reason that we're here. I just want to make sure everybody can see my slide okay and can hear me okay. And hopefully you can. And I also would like to introduce some of the rest of the team who is here. Oops, now I was sharing my screen and then I stopped sharing my screen. There we go. So I want to comment on a couple of the other people who are here. I am joined here today with, of course, Kristen, who you may have had some interaction with, getting scheduled or getting information about the event. Kristen will be putting some of the links that you will need for the registering for the goodies, the potential goodies, I should say, and other links that you might use for resources and stuff like that. So Kristen will be there to help out. And then we also have Austin. Austin is here to help me answer some of your questions, or at least to keep track of your questions. Now, it's good general manners to in a session of this size to make sure that we're practicing good hygiene in our team meeting. So if you could please keep your cameras and microphones, or cameras off and microphones muted, at least until we get to the QA session where we will have time for you to be able to ask questions. If you want to, you can type questions into the chat and we will be happy to try to answer them as we go through, or definitely at the end of the session. So here we are, we're ready to get started. And again, we are continuing, and I said this yesterday in my session, and not everybody who is in here has been to my session prior, but we are going to be talking about activity-based assessment outcomes, and that's really where we want to get to. But we have a couple of other things that we need to talk about first. Do not forget that you can post and win. Go to LinkedIn, Twitter, and or Facebook and mention that you're attending launch. Attach a picture with or without you in it. Try to make it creative. We always like to see the best ones out there. And tag Learn On Demand Systems. You can tag us by going to LinkedIn and using Learn On Demand Systems. Twitter is at LOD Systems. And Facebook is at Learn On Demand Systems. If you want to, make sure you tag me as well, and I'll be happy to respond and thank you for being there. But mention to people that you're having a good time, and let's try to get even more people at Launch Q2 as well. All right, as I mentioned, we are going to talk about a couple of things here. We're going to talk about a review of the basics. We're just going to talk briefly about questions, activities, and scoring. And then we're going to talk about grouping and randomizing. And then we'll actually get into outcomes. Now, outcomes is sort of a choose your own adventure. Which road are you going to travel? So we're going to talk about those in different scenarios. So a review of the questions. You may not be familiar with this, so I'm just going to cover it really briefly. We have both questions, activities, and then we can score those questions and activities inside of Lab on Demand IDLX Editor. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera just so that you guys can concentrate on the screen and the slides. So let me turn off my camera. There we go. And let's go ahead and talk about how you create and edit questions. So the basis for this is actually fundamental set of instructions, but then you add questions and or activities. So let's take a look here at an example of some activities. I actually have a couple of examples here. So here's an example of multiple choice questions. And again, these are inside of the instructions. Now, it's important to remember that questions can be done with or without any sort of extra content. So for example, when I launch this lab, all you're going to see here are the questions. So you could do this in conjunction with maybe something that's installed on a person's computer. You could have them run something on their local computer and then ask them questions about things that they see. Of course, you're going to have to know that those answers are correct, but there are some great ways of being able to distribute just questions. Think of it as a pre-class assessment or post-class assessment, for instance. So you see here, we've got an example of a set of math questions, and then what is Brian's favorite color? So let's take a look at what that actually looks like. Go ahead and cancel that. What that looks like inside of our instructions. Now here is my basic IDLX editor. On the right-hand side, you see the rendered scenario or the rendered instructions, and on the left-hand side, you see the markdown that creates those instructions. So inside of Lab on Demand, any lab profile, you can edit the instructions and then go to activities. Now, activities are both questions and activities. And a lot of times when we are referring to activities within a lab, we are talking about activity-based assessments in the lab. So ABA is the let me do something inside of the VM or inside of the cloud environment or something like that. Whereas up here, we have questions and answers can be based on multiple choice or fill in the blank. So if I wanted to create a new question, I click on here, and this is exactly what the scenario looks like. We have multiple choice or with multiple choice single answer, multiple choice multiple answer, short answer exact match, and then short answer regex match. So we've got all of those different capabilities out there as part of our questions. Now, if I wanted to create a new activity. Oh, this doesn't have a VM, so I can't do a new activity. Or I can only do questions here. But let me show you an example of something that actually has activities. And that is located right here. And if I go in and edit my instructions on this one, you will notice that these activities are, the first one is a question, and then we have things that are based on what's going on inside of the VM. So if we take a look, here is a question right here with multiple choice single answer. And then we have the example of check number of files, and I've got a lab activity here. And this is a example of a question that is submitting a script to our Windows participant using PowerShell, and then the script is located right down here, and it's going in to check, for example, how many files are here. All right, so those are the quick basics. Now, one thing I should mention is you can determine whether or not you are going to allow scoring. Now, scoring is something that takes a lab to a different level. It becomes a type of exam. It may not necessarily be a performance-based exam or performance-based testing. For example, you could turn something into an exam just by turning on scoring, even though all it has are questions. So let's go back to my previous example. Here we go. Just need to back up. Here we go. If I go in and edit my instructions here and go to the activities, I have enable scoring. So if I click on this, that turns scoring on, and now am I going to show a result upon completion, or am I not going to? I'm just going to submit it and let the chips fall where they may. Or do I want to show detailed results, meaning which answers you got right and which ones you got wrong. If you uncheck this, the scoring report is just going to show, congratulations, you passed, or sorry, you did not pass, and it'll give you a score. If you have this turned on, it will give you that, plus it will show you the questions you got right and the questions you got wrong. So you have to be careful about that detailed results if you want somebody to be able to retake an exam and then have it be repeatable without them, being able to know exactly which ones they got wrong and what the right answers were. So I usually recommend turning that off. Just give them the score report. Yes, you passed, you got it with this, or no, you didn't pass, you got this out of this. So those are the basics. Let's go back to our slides. And how do we throw wrenches, or how do we throw monkey wrenches into the gears, so to speak? Well, we've got a couple of options at our disposal. Remember that any predictable pattern can be memorized. So you want something that will shake it up. And the things you can do to shake that up are to use random answer locations, or you use groups of activities to randomize the questions into pools. And I had an example up that had those already grouped, and we'll show you what that means in just a second. The other way to handle this and to use outcomes to choose what leads to where. So, for example, you could start off and you could say, here's question one, and question one is middle of the road. It's a question that somebody should be able to answer, but it's trickier than just the basics. If they get that question right, then they go to a harder question. If they get that question wrong, they get a slightly easier question, something a little bit more about the basics. Now, you could take that and through the use of scripting and things like that, you could actually say, all right, you got this one wrong. We can actually change your instructions based on the question that you got wrong. So think about this for a second. You have a lab that is built to teach somebody how to do 3 different things, basic, intermediate, and advanced. And you ask a question that should be intermediate and they don't know the answer. Now you give them the instructions on how to do a basic lab. If they get the answer correct, you give them how to do an intermediate lab. And then when they're done, you take them to the advanced portion, and then that's how to do the advanced. And then at the end, you give them a question that will actually be scored to see whether or not they got through all that. It doesn't matter whether somebody who completed the intermediate and the advanced and scored well did the basic, because they already have proven that they have the intermediate and advanced skills. You assume, not always incorrectly, but you assume that they have the right skills to do the basic stuff. So those are all examples of how you can take a single lab, and in a single lab, ask questions and do things that will challenge the user and not necessarily count them down because you failed because you weren't able to complete the intermediate results. Well, here, if you can't complete the intermediate, let's take you to the basics. And then maybe if they can't do the basics, then we take them to a different lab. We say, this lab probably isn't right for you. Go ahead and end this lab and use this one instead, or something along those lines. So there are great ways of doing stuff. Now, let's talk about the randomizing first. Changing the order of the questions answers. You would be surprised that if you repeated the same exam, the exact same exam, with the exact same questions and the exact same answers, but the answers themselves were in a different order. So what is 1 + 1? And then the first answer is 1. Second answer is 2, and so on and so forth. And then the next time they ran the lab or got the question, it had what is 1 + 1, and 2 is the first answer, and 1 is the second answer, and 5 is the third answer. If you randomize the order of the answers, it will make it so that they can't just memorize what location. And yes, you would be surprised at how many people do memorization in order to pass tests. So don't keep things in the order. And we have a way of randomizing the answers. Then you can change the order of questions within a group. And I'll show you how to do these things in just a few minutes. You can use grouping to change up the scoring. So group similar types of questions together behind the scenes. And this is perfect for using those get 2 out of 3 of these answers correct. Because if you group them together, you can do the scoring for the group and not for the individual. Well, I shouldn't say that. You're still doing the individual, but the group is going to provide the answer or your score, not individual ones providing the score. And once again, I'll show you these in just a moment. Activity-based outcomes. These are some of my favorite things. You're trying to ensure that the learners are not wasting time with questions that they don't need to answer. I know the answer to this level of questions. Well, then I don't want to give you even easier questions. I want to make sure that I'm challenging you and giving you tougher questions or tougher activities. So you start off and here you are and you ask question 1, and then in this case, you got question 1 incorrect. So the second question is the same level of difficulty. If you get, if you want to, you can use a question to set a variable that you can use in instructions or scripting or other questions and activities. And this is what I was talking about before. If you get the question right, you're going to be taken to another part of the lab, which is a much more advanced part of the lab or a much easier part of the lab. Now, that's one way of using activity outcomes. Now, if you combine all of these, now you've got an amazing thing. You randomize your question within groups. If you get question one right, now you go to the second level, but now you're getting a random question in that second level. This keeps your questions appropriate to the skill level. And then this one asks the random question from 2. If you get that one wrong, it takes you back to 1. If you get that one right, you go up to 3, or maybe you take them to any one of these additional things. Now, one of my favorite things and something we talked about in the last session was click a button to have one of up to 5 random things happen in the current exam, and then give that to the user as a question or as an activity or as a break fix. We call it the chaos monkey, and this is really like taking all of these pieces and putting them together. Okay. All right. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at how we shake up some questions. We've already covered the basics a little bit. Now let's go in and take a look at a more advanced scenario. All right. So I am going to, I'm using my previous example here. Now you'll notice on the right-hand side, I see a rendering of 2 questions, even though I only have one activity up here and a second activity, which is what is your favorite color? The reason I'm doing that is because I have put these into a multiple choice question group. Okay. And inside of this group is a setting where we can randomize what questions we're going to get out of this group. So how many of these questions am I going to get? And I have here set to 2. Let's just change this to 1 for a second, and we'll save that, and we'll close. Notice my instructions on the right-hand side immediately change to reference 1 random question out of that pool of 4 questions. And I should have this one highlighted. Here we go. So you see here the pool of the 4 different questions that are highlighted in blue. What is 1 plus 1? What is 2 plus 2? You see the trend here. But I'm only getting 1 of those. Now, if I edit this and change it to, say, 3, oops. I knew I was going to get it right, and close. Now you see that I get 3. I get 2 plus 2, 4 plus 4, and 1 plus 1. Now, what happens if I reload this screen? Notice they're in a different order, and I have different things. That's because it's random each time I get it. But if I do this inside of a lab, the lab stays the same unless I manually go in and change the instructions inside of the lab. So once you get a lab, you get a set of random questions, and those random questions are locked in for that lab. All right. So that's how we can randomize the questions. Now, notice the order up here of 4 plus 4, 7, 21, 8, and 6. If we go into my activities and look at 4 plus 4, if I edit this, you will notice that I can randomize the answer sequence. If I don't do this, if I uncheck that box and save and close, you'll notice that 4 plus 4 has 6, 7, 8, and 21 in that order. So now if I've seen this lab a couple of times, I'm always going to see 4 plus 4 in that order. And eventually I'm going to figure out what the right answer is from just repeating it. Or I'm going to memorize 4 plus 4 is always the third answer. So by doing randomization, either in the number of questions, which questions they get, and the, oops, sorry, did the wrong one here. Here we go. That's 1 plus 1. That's not the right one. I can do this. Here we go. The 4 plus 4 by randomizing the answer sequence in 4 plus 4 like I have here. We are all set to not show them the same thing every single time. So now when these are grouped together, please note that we don't set a score for the group. What we're doing is we're saying, if I'm going to give you 3 of these, each one of these has their own score weight. All right. Where is my score? Maybe I don't have this right. That's all of my activities. Oh, that's because it's not scoring. Duh. There we go. Now, if I turn on scoring, if I go into edit, you can say here what the activity score for the group if you get the group correct. But if you get the group correct, you can also specify what the score value of each individual question is. So if the group is going to be a score value of 3, then you can say, I've got 1 out of the 3 correct. That's what I was talking about before. Just get 1 out of the 3 correct. You don't have to get them all correct. And that helps you dictate which of these things is the most important. If I have 3 questions in the math category, and it's very important that you know 4 plus 4, I'm going to give that one slightly more weight. And therefore, if you get 3 questions, and one of them is 4 plus 4, and I really want you to have 4 plus 4 correct if you get it, then I want to make sure that the other 2 have a lower weight and 4 plus 4 has a higher weight. So that's grouping, that's randomization, but that's not outcomes. So for outcomes, we've got to go to a slightly different lab that I have up. And this one is actually has some lab, it has a VM associated with it. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. And while it's coming up, I'm going to, whoops, I'm going to bring up the instructions. I think it just covered up my lab. Hold on. Yep, that's still being built. All right. So here is the example of the lab. You can see here that what we've got is a set of questions that are simple, still simple, harder, also harder. So these are 2 different levels of questions. Then we've got a geography question, we've got basic work, file work, and so on and so forth. All of these have, they're on separate pages within. And just waiting for my lab to be built here so I can show you what it looks like. But in the meantime, let me bring up my activities. I don't know why I have this group set up. I think I was just going to put them into groups. Oh, I was going to show you how to put things into groups, which you can do by simply when you edit, you can say that when you're editing your question, you just take a question and drop it down and you can pop it into a group. So therefore now it will be part of your group's questions. There you go. There we go. Now my lab is up. So notice that we're talking about how we have different pages, and then here are my questions. Now, this is what we would typically think of in a exam scenario, right? So this doesn't have to be used for exams. This could be used for challenge labs where we're just challenging somebody to get it done and to fail forward and all of that kind of stuff, right? So here's the simple question. What is 1 + 1? Let's see what happens if I get that one wrong. Now notice when the second I clicked that, it automatically moved me into still simple. So if I get this one wrong, what happens? Well, this one actually carries on to the next answer. So I don't want it to do that. I wanted it to actually be that it moved me to the end because I didn't get my questions right. So let's take a look at those instructions one more time. Let me close this, and we'll use the instruction editor right inside of the lab. So I'm going to edit my instructions here inside of the lab. I'm going to stretch this out a little bit, and I'm going to modify my activities. Now, this is how you can do outcomes. The first simple question that comes up, this is going to be the first question they hit. We can use when the question is answered and correct, we're going to go to page whatever. This one, in this case, it's going to go to page 4, which is set as harder. When the question is answered and incorrect, it is going to stay in the simple category or go to still simple. Now, the choices here are when it's answered. That means that the second they click on it, their only option is to move to the next page. If we want to, we can put an evaluation in like this, on-demand evaluation, and now we can change this to when it is evaluated, and we'll save this and close, and we'll go back here and we'll reload. There we go. So we come in and we answer and we say 3 and we check. Just confirming, my screen just changed here a little bit. Is everybody still able to see my screen?
Yeah, good over here.
All right, cool. Just want to make sure. My screen just flickered here, so I wanted to make sure. We've had a couple of Teams-related issues lately. So, all right. So now I'm at 2 + 2, and now if I answer this one incorrectly with 3, you notice that that was immediately after I clicked on it. It moved me. It didn't give me a chance to evaluate. That's what the first one gave me a chance to evaluate. So now, notice that now that I come back, I've already moved beyond this. This is restricting me from coming back and changing an incorrect answer to a correct answer, which is what you want. All right. All right, so let's just fix my problem here. When I get this one wrong, right, 2 + 2 is 1, it shouldn't take me to a harder question. It should take me out, or it should take me to the end. So let's go ahead and edit our instructions once again. And this is what I was talking about before with the choose your own adventure. You have to keep track of where things are, right? Because you know that, or if you don't know this, in Markdown, we have the illustration of equal, 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 which gives us a page break. And then when we do what the page break, whatever we use as the heading will become whatever that page is. That's how when we go in and edit our activities, what is 2 + 2? Edit. If we are answered incorrect, I shouldn't go to harder. And I specifically did this incorrectly. You see, when I do my drop down, it should be, if it's incorrect, it should be thanks for playing. And if it's correct, it should go to the harder question, right? So let's save that and close and come back in here and refresh. Yes, I know. Thank you. Go back. Now, I've already gotten this one wrong. It knows that, and it won't let me change that. But if I do 2 + 2 and I get it wrong, it takes me right to thanks for playing. Now, if I go back, because I haven't evaluated, I can still change this. So if I get it correct, now it takes me automatically to harder. All right. All right, so there's a question out there. Can we evaluate the answers of multiple questions all together and decide where to go next based on the overall outcome? So if you get 3 out of the 5 correct, can I take you to something? And if we go back in and edit our instructions and go in here, if I put things into a group, unfortunately, groups don't have the ability to, well, hold on a second. I want to make sure I'm saying this correct. Let me modify my, I like to give myself a lot of room to look at my activities. Yeah, so one thing about when I create a group or work with a group, I don't have the ability to give an outcome based on a group. So I can't group these together yet. That would be an excellent request for our feedback form. All right. So we've talked about randomization, we've talked about grouping, and we've talked about how you can use outcomes to choose your own adventure. And we've taken a look at how you can do those things. Now, you can also do these with activities. All right. So my example here of can you guess or can you tell me the correct number of files, text files on the desktop? I can actually do outcomes based on my scripts, and I can do the go to page and I can select the different pages. Or one of the other settings that we have is we can set variables, either ones that are already set, or we can create a new variable and we can set its value. Once we have a variable, we can then use that variable in scripts or in other activities. So we set the variable, and then that variable is there for the lab. Not only can you get it inside of the VM, but you can also use it as part of your instructions and your activities. There are some amazing things that you could do. So imagine, if you will, a lab where you have a set of activities that build up a lab. And you get everything correct, and then you do a score on whether or not somebody was successfully able to build the lab correctly. Then you have them click a button, and it randomly, based on a script and what the results of all of the things were up to that point, randomly breaks something in that lab. And then it confirms that it is broken, and then it will also check and score based on whether they can fix. So you get a score for what you did up to that point, and everything's correct. Now we give you 8 points. You give it a value, and then you do the click here to break your lab, randomly break it, and then which is handled through a script, and can also be an outcome of A/B outcome of, did you set it up correctly? All right, then let's break it and we'll fix it. Otherwise, if you didn't quite set it up correctly, you were supposed to do 5 activities, you only did 3 of those activities, then you would, you only did 3 correctly, you would just end their lab and give them a score of 3, which isn't enough to pass. But if you've done everything correctly, then you could give them a different activity. So there's just all sorts of really cool scenarios where you're not limited anymore to just here's a set of questions or here's an activity to do. All right, let us go back to the slides. As always, we want to make sure that you have the resources you need to be able to do the job that you need to do. So if you wanted to learn more about activities and performance-based testing, we have all of this stuff, outcomes and randomization and grouping. All of that is located together at lods.1/PBT and scoring. That's Paul Baker Tammy scoring. LODS.1 PBT and scoring. That's all one word, no spaces. I cannot stress this strongly enough. Please, please, please fill out the session evaluation. The link will be coming from Kristen in our chat, and you can also see it at the end of your activities in your session where you clicked on Enter Classroom. to come to this meeting in the TMS. You could fill it out there as well, but the link is in our chat. We have had some really, really good discussions with our customers, and all of those discussions or a lot of those discussions take place inside of Slack. It is specifically there for lab authors, but it's not limited to lab authors. There's other specific channels out there, but labauthor.slack.com will help you out immensely, not just from our team, but also from your peers, people who are on this call. Hey, so if you really like the capability here about, you know, man, I really like the fact that I could do some outcomes and stuff like that, but you look at it and you go, man, that's really confusing. Don't worry. We have an entire team standing by. Their name is called Professional Services. They're an entire division of our team. They have the technology, the people, the processes, and the expertise to help you out with instructional design or courseware or slides or SCORM content, videos, and of course, doing labs and exams and putting things in where you can do different outcomes and scripts and all those other kind of things. High stakes or low stakes, badging or certifications, we've got people who are standing by to help. I can't say enough positive things about the professional services team. A lot of the examples that we use for these demonstrations are created by our product services team. If you've got product feedback, and again, I keep going back to Corey's core note or keynote. He said most of the changes that have come out of from the TMS and with Lab on Demand in the first quarter of this year have come because of requests from customers. So don't hesitate to do product feedback. And you can check out the feedback portal. You can add a new idea, you can search for ideas, or you can upvote a current idea if you find one. So that is at lods.one/feedback. Link once again in our chat. Our special launch offer. This is something just for you above and beyond the prize for posting on the social media. We are doing a G2 review for our support team. And we want you to go out and review us, review Learn on Demand Systems on G2. We will email you a $25 gift card for a vendor or to a vendor of your choice. Here's how you do it. You go to lods.one/review us, no spaces. Take a screenshot and send it to events at Learn on Demand Systems. And in that same email, tell us how you want your $25, Starbucks, Amazon, etc. And we will send you the gift card via email. And believe me, our technical support staff deserve any praise that you have for them because they do amazing work. I hope that you've never had to reach out to our technical support team, but if you have had to do so, you know that that team is standing by 24/7 live. They're 365 days a year. So do not hesitate to go out there and salute them a little bit. And with that, it is time for your questions. You are free to raise your hand and I'll call on you and we can go ahead and have you unmute your microphone. Otherwise, please do me a favor and type it in chat. And I hope that you have learned a little bit about how to do the magic voodoo that we do so well with outcomes, randomization, and grouping.